2025 might be the most important year ever for Dead by Daylight, considering that the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter is coming in summer, potentially the biggest license ever, which is why I think this is the year where behavior has to pull their socks up. And one of the things I do not want to happen is for all those new players to come into the game and find out how miserable the new player experience is for beginners, especially when you're playing with someone already experienced with DbD. While the concept of Dead by Daylight is pretty easy to understand for new players, the game itself actually has a depth so massive that even players with 200 hours are considered beginners. Imagine investing 200 hours in any other game. That's absolutely crazy. And the main reason why this happens is because the game itself is not well explained at all. When compared to any other modern video game in the market, understanding who you're going against is pretty easy. Most games come with explanations of the powers and abilities of your enemies, but this is not the case for Dead by Daylight. Instead of players having to search YouTube for Oddsdarva's 3-hour-long add-on tier list, which can also end up outdated quickly, like is the case for my Killers Explained for Beginners video, behavior should implement everything inside the game in an easy way for players to learn. First of all, the tutorial itself is very outdated. The concept of it is great, but there are many fundamental things that are not explained in this tutorial, with the only update being the anti-face camp mechanic, which is called the resolve mechanic in the tutorial. There is no explanation of the anti-tree generator mechanic, no showcase of chests or totems and how they work, and the playstyle incentivized in the tutorial is not good. Killer powers, add-ons and perks are not as well explained either. A lot of players still don't know how Sadako's power works completely, and many players don't know that you have to go and open the Lament configuration in order to avoid the chain hunt. The only time some of these things are explained is for the very first times you play against a new killer, but that's it. Allowing players to learn the killer powers before they actually play against that killer would greatly improve the quality of a lot of solo queue matches, as truth be told, the majority of players actually don't know what they're doing, which is clear when the most basic and C-tier characters in the game have some of the most insane kill rates. Yes, I am talking about you, post-rework school merchant. I think the best solution to this problem would be to modify the game manual section and actually visually showcase how each killer power works at the very least, as well as every single base mechanic in the game, like skill checks, hex totems, scourge hooks, boons, invocations, chests, sabotaging hooks, you get it. Just an animated video showing how the Houndmaster performs search, how she does chase, how you can redirect your dog, the effects of Hound Sense, and how your teammates can remove the dog from you would help new players and casuals so much. As a fun fact, the Trapper's power still doesn't tell you that you get a speed boost when setting up a bear trap. There could even be a section showing you a basic way to counter a killer, like a video explaining that as a survivor you should interact with tapes and turn off the TVs. And just like Marvel Rival does, there should be a suggested playstyle for every killer, like a part where it tells you that you can use your speed as Wraith in order to body block survivors and prevent them from vaulting or throwing pallets. This is something very basic that a lot of Wraith players still don't know about. Now, in terms of add-ons and perks, there are way too many to have a video showcasing specifically how each add-on or perk work. You can also combine various add-ons, adding into the confusion, so it's unrealistic for me to ask behavior to add a visual showcase of every single add-on in the game, as it would make the file size of DbD like a Call of Duty one. But allowing players to see how add-ons work is very important, especially when you have killers like Freddy, Nurse, Myers, Doctor or Hag, which can completely change depending on the add-ons they use. For this situation, there is already a mode programmed in Dead by Daylight that could help every single player learn the game more, and that is the custom matches. One of my most used features as a content creator is the ability to enter a match as a killer in order to record something specific. However, there is no way for me as a survivor to enter the match against a specific killer without bothering my friends, and I hope killer bots is something that is finally implemented fully in 2025, because that would help a lot of new players learn the counterplay of each killer and how their powers work. For example, going back to Sadako, playing against a bot on Rio might help you understand how the tape works, same with the Xenomorphs turrets or Skull Merchants drones. And just like with survivors, you can choose what add-ons and perks each of the killer bots run with, so you, for example, that way can see how hex perks work. I would be more than happy if at the very least they allowed us to play against a trapper bot, as this is already implemented in DbD, or straight up allow us to enter matches without any players so we can explore the map or test perks and add-ons. In fact, what Behavior could do is make your first matches as a new player against bots. This would also prevent people from smurfing in Dead by Daylight, which is something that is actually possible and there is no penalty whatsoever right now for it. I also think a training ground mode is needed for the game. Currently, as a new player, you cannot use any of the paid killers at all unless you spend money on Dead by Daylight, and that's a problem. Maybe you enjoy how Dracula plays based on videos you saw on YouTube, but once you buy him and try him out, it turns out he is not at all what you enjoy. A training ground mode will allow you to use any killer against 4 bots with any perk you want as well as any add-ons, so that way you know what you're dealing with. The reason why this mode is separate from custom matches is because if you could play any killer you want in custom matches against your friends, this will potentially impact the revenue of Behavior, as some players will only play custom matches. And the reason I say this is because I think custom matches have a lot of potential for increasing the longevity of the game. One of the biggest reasons game live for a long time is thanks to the community, and this is why I think a complete rework of the custom matches mode would help the game thrive a lot and give it a new boost of players, especially those returning to DbD. So, the very first change I would wish Behavior did was to create public custom match lobbies for other players to join, similar to how you can host server for other players in games like Age of Mythology, old Battlefield games, or Roblox. You can set up your lobby to invite only, password locked, private to play with bots, or public for anyone to join. Then, let players completely customize their own matches with more options to it. This would allow the host to ban certain perks, survivors, killers, maps, or add-ons. On top of that, I would make it so that you could individually modify the features of the maps as you wanted. For example, choose a specific way that the map is generated, increase the amount of chests or pallets in the map, or make specific items come out from the chests, make hooks spawn closer or further apart, reduce or increase the number of generators, things like that. This would significantly help competitive players in setting up their matches and making things more fair. It would also allow players to 1 vs 1 others without having to join random Discord servers and asking people for it. Additionally, all current modifiers as well as all future modifiers should be introduced in custom matches. So if you want to play Lights Out or Chaos Shuffle with others, you can do so by hosting a match with that modifier enabled. I would also add new modifiers to the list, like a modifier where everyone moves twice as fast, or a modifier where killers' powers have no cooldown, like Infinite Hatches Huntress or Infinite Clown Bottles, and just things like that, so that players can create their own modifiers by customizing how the match will work like. Imagine all the crazy modes that players will create with these tools. Some people might host lobbies where the main game mode is Prop Hunt, where you chase survivors that are totems, chests, pallets, lockers, generators, or specific map props, and the killers have to find you before the time runs out. Or how about an infected mode, where you start as one killer in a big map against 8 survivors on a time limit, and the moment you down a survivor, they become a killer too. A mode inspired on the slug races and red light green light, where the moment you move, you're sacrificed by the entity. This single thing could actually make Dead by Daylight significantly more enjoyable for the vast majority of the player base. This would actually be the true casual mode for people that enjoy DbD's core gameplay, their characters, or the game itself, but they hate the sweatiness and toxicity of the default matches. This new custom matches rework would help new players learn the killers without losing anything for it. It would help competitive players set up their matches faster without the use of Discord or other third-party sites, and it would massively help content creators set up custom matches for their viewers during streams, improving the interactivity of the game itself as well as make fun videos with it. I personally think that custom matches is the biggest untapped gold mine hidden in DbD, and this single-handedly would bring a lot of old players tired from DbD back into the game. So outside of custom matches, I also want to see improvements to DbD itself for everyone, and that is why I would love to see a feature that was in DbD Mobile: weekly killer rotations. Allow players to try out specific killers and specific perks weekly just so they know if those killers are worth it or not before they purchase. The weekly trials would only contain free grindable characters for players to try, and this even works as a FOMO tactic, so players that maybe want to try out the unknown will now play on the week where they are free, and then end up loving it so much that they decide to purchase that killer, and on top of that, add a blood point incentive for everyone playing those specific characters, so people with them unlocked will still have a reason to play as those characters specifically. This would help the developers boost low pick rate killers and perks in order to get more data that helps them balance out those things, and this would also artificially create metas in Dead by Daylight to prevent the constant staleness and burnout that many players currently feel. For example, if a week is fully dedicated to Deathslingers, players that enjoy playing against him will have more of a reason to play, as then they would get to see their favorite killer in the spotlight, and maybe in a week where Boon Shadow Step is free, killers will finally bring Shattered Hope and Pentimento to counter it. In fact, if they wanted to, what they could do to fix the shrine is make an extra section where the featured killers and survivors have all their perks available to purchase. This would increase the shrine to 10 perks weekly from 4, which is already a gigantic jump compared to before. It would still be a terrible system, but it would be an improvement. Currently, there is no ranked mode in DbD, and outside of self-imposed challenges, there is no reason to go off meta or use subpar killers. With weekly rotations, players have a reason to interact with things they might have never interacted with in the past. And let's talk about this specific problem, the problem of the staleness that the game has due to the fact that you as a player have absolutely zero reason not to play the exact same characters with the same overpowered build always. Currently, there is nothing preventing a player from grinding a character to Prestige 100 in order to have basically infinite amounts of syringes or other busted add-ons and bringing them in every single match. There is also no reason to play with any build other than the most optimal, because why would you want to outside of dump gimmicks? This is where I think grindable cosmetic rewards could come incredibly handy. One of my biggest disappointments in Dead by Daylight was the fact that the emblems and banner system is completely locked behind time-limited events, the archives, and paywalled behind cosmetics or Twitch drops. I think emblems and banners should be rewards for specific challenges you do in-game, similar to how it works in Call of Duty, and this is something I have wanted for literal years. Imagine this. Every single killer comes with a unique emblem for when you reach certain prestige milestones, like for example a bronze sable portrait when you reach prestige 25, a silver one for prestige 50, a gold one for prestige 75, and an iridescent animated one for prestige 100. This way, you reward the most dedicated players with an emblem that shows who their favorite DbD character is. For banners, I would literally copy the exact same features as Call of Duty, add specific grindable banners that are unlocked by performing certain specific actions in the game. For example, blinding killers with Champion of Light a certain amount of times, hitting survivors with Huntress hatchets from far away, retrieving your legendary items from survivors with Vecna for various matches, and so on. Make all the achievements in DbD part of the actual game and reward players for getting them, especially the rarest ones like the Michael Myers achievement of killing everyone with Tombstone, or the one where you have to survive a match with Vecna with a legendary item. Not only should the rewards be banners and emblems, I think adding actual cosmetics would be really cool too. For example, escaping or sacrificing a certain amount of times would reward killers with golden variants of their weapons and survivors with legacy type of clothing recolors. This way, you can show off your dedication in-game, as currently the only things that do so are the legacy prestige cosmetics, which are completely unavailable to the vast majority of players. And that's it. All the rest of cosmetics are basically paywalled, so seeing one in-game is nothing crazy. This way, you give players a reason to try out other killers and off-meta perks once again, and you also reward them with cosmetics that they can show off to others. This would also give a reason to players with thousands of hours to grind for something after they unlocked everything the game has to offer, as currently the Prestige grind is incredibly unrewarding because after Prestige 9 you literally don't get anything. Now, when this feature is added, a lot of players will get plenty of banners and cosmetics, but you can only use one to showcase currently. That is why I think a profile feature would be really cool to see in DbD, where you can showcase your favorite survivor and killer, as well as choose a specific cosmetic for them, and also choose various banners as well as emblems to showcase to everyone. Most importantly, what I want is for statistics to actually track in-game in order to show everyone how much you have done with specific characters, kinda like Apex Legends does. Leaderboards is something that DbD Mobile also had, and I think it would be fantastic in DbD. For example, you might be an amazing Deathslinger main, and currently the only thing to show off is a Prestige 100, but with this system, now you can show off the amount of times you have hit your shots in the game, and with leaderboards, you will actually get to know if you are the best Deathslinger in all of Europe or Asia. There is a way to track things in DbD, but it's currently locked behind third-party websites, and we know Behavior tracks all these things already and they have the data. In the past, Behavior has said that doing so will require to completely wipe all statistics in the game, and honestly, I would argue that the earlier this is done, the better, as that way dedicated mains can start grinding their characters back again. But I do wish a solution is found where all the past statistics are not lost. Leaderboards is yet another way to reward dedicated players, as then they can genuinely say that they are the top 1 main character in Dead by Daylight, and is something that casual players can access without having to use YouTube. Now you can show off your profile knowing that you have insane statistics, and since profiles can be accessed by any player as long as you set them to public, this will make players want to customize their profiles more and spend more money on cosmetics to show off to others. Now let's talk about one of the biggest problems in DbD, and that is toxicity and players giving up. This is true, and it's one of the biggest reasons why many players end up leaving the games. The problem is that once again, there is nothing in Dead by Daylight that promotes playing well, and nothing that prevents you from just leaving the match. This is why I think the prop system should be reworked to become better. And yes, I said reworked, because did you know that you can already give props to your teammates in DbD? You probably didn't, because nobody uses it. Since this system is already in game, I think the devs should work on it or make it something important for DbD. So this is where I would put a new good behavior tier, which increases the more props you get, and the higher it is, you will get an extra reward of blood points for each match you play, as well as other players will get to see that maybe you are a good sport, a good player, or a good teacher. Now, the only way to get points removed from it is being reported by a lot of your matches and confirmed by a developer, or by disconnecting from the game a lot. It is important that the threshold for this is high in order to prevent punishing players with bad internet, or those that play against cheaters to allow them to disconnect. And with this, players have an extra reason to try their best at being good players. For example, you might give props to a killer that was really good and you found very skillful, or a survivor which you found friendly and that sacrificed themselves to get you out of the match. The only potential problem of this would be entitled players or sore losers reporting players, but as a counter argument, this is something players can already do, so the prop system would literally be a positive. I would also add the behavior system as part of the matchmaking, so the better you behave, you also get to play with other players that behave well. And for those people that DC at the smallest inconvenience, or those killers that actually exploit and do some very toxic stuff, well, they get to play with each other. I think behavior should start rewarding players that actually make the game a better place and spread positivity, because once again, there is currently no reason to be a good sport. You can bleed out all 4 survivors in every single match and there are absolutely no consequences whatsoever, even though the match is over and there is no competitive reason to bleed out everyone. And don't bring me the 4% argument, because you can easily counter that, and let's be honest, winning in DbD is not that big of a deal. Now, another very important thing to add into the game is features to prevent toxicity from happening in the first place. And what I mean with toxicity is not tunneling, slugging, camping, or intentionally baiting the killer into a chase by clicking the flashlight or teabagging. What I want out is body blocking and bleeding out on the ground, because those two completely take away your agency out of the game and force you to waste a lot of time for no reason, and the worst part is that both of them have easy means to be removed from the game. The first one is body blocking and taking players hostage, and the solution is already implemented on the twins. If you're standing still for a long while, you completely lose collision with both any survivors and any killers too. This would completely remove any opportunity any player has to hold a player hostage without using any exploits like being outside of the map or in places that cannot be reached, as those can be reported and usually they are taken seriously. And the best part is that this solution will not impact the game in any way. As a killer, you have no competitive reason to lose collision by standing still, and as a survivor, you get zero benefits from having no collision with the killer or other survivors, as you would be wasting a monumental amount of time just to get a flashlight save at most, and the moment you move a bit from the area where you were standing still, you get the collision back. The second solution would be to allow survivors to bleed out faster after you're slugged on the ground for long enough. As a survivor, if you're slugged for that long to the point you're getting crows, the match is over for you. Just go next. These types of matches are completely pointless as you barely get any blood points, and it would greatly help combat those situations. So 2024 introduced the FOV slider, which is agreed to be one of the biggest accessibility changes introduced since the Daltonic mode and wiggle skill checks. However, the accessibility and settings features in DbD are severely underbaked, so I think more accessibility features should be implemented this year. The Daltonism mode should be improved by a lot, and one feature I would love to see is being able to change the colors of scratch marks, generators, and auras in general to specific colors you choose. This should be an easy option to implement and is something that the vast majority of modern games do. There is a possibility that this is hard to do with scratch marks since they might be programmed in a way that prevents us from changing their color easily, but I believe this is very worth to program. Now, in regards to people that are hard of hearing, I think this is way more complicated because depending on how it's introduced, it could actually impact the most skilled players. For example, the visual heartbeat indicator does give a competitive advantage over not having it against characters like Sadako or any other killers with lullabies. Now think about it this way, why were people not mad when Fortnite or Minecraft introduced accessibility features for the deaf and hard hearing? That is because the sound in those games is actually well made. In DbD, the sound is so bad that having this feature would actually put a band-aid over one of the things the game has struggled with the most, audio. So, if it were in my hands, just give us a directional audio toggle that tells you from where sounds are happening. This is already something that is in DbD Mobile, and this is information that anyone that can hear has. It would not make the spirit sit here, because if your ears work, you already have this. The directional audio toggle would literally make a huge impact for a lot of hard-hearing players in the community, and if you as a player have any problem with it, just activate it yourself. Now, I am not oblivious to the fact that this can be abused in some way. For example, it might show the direction of where a crow was scared off, giving away the position of a survivor. It might also give away the location of a survivor hiding inside a locker, as this is something that you can hear as a killer, but it's subtle. And it might also literally tell you the location of a killer through walls in real time while they are double backing to mind game you. This is why I personally think that this feature should not reveal sounds that are extremely subtle to the human ear. Things like crows from far away or a survivor breathing should only be revealed when you are very close to that player, say 2 or 3 meters away from them. And in order to prevent pinpoint accuracy, which is something competitive players actually take into advantage with the old version of Spine Chill, which told you the distance from the killer, I think the indicator should have a pretty big line to show you just the direction of where the sound is coming from, and not the exact location of where the sound is happening. Next up, add visibility settings like contrast and brightness. Very competitive games like Escape from Tarkov come with filters that you can change, and it's a game where visual information is significantly more important than Dead by Daylight. You're telling me that a game that is so hardcore actually has a better accessibility feature than a game which asks for labor of love? Hell, all single player horror games actually come with brightness settings too. Yes, this game has a dark atmosphere on purpose, but everyone is just using filters, and even if filters are banned, monitors now come with filters pre-baked on them. Yes, filters do give an advantage for the highest caliber of players, and that is a fact, but there is no way to prevent players from using them, so just bake them in game so console players can turn the brightness up, and that way everyone has the same visibility when they are in Nightfall against a dredge, or when they are in a very dark map. There is literally no argument against adding filters as part of Dead by Daylight, since a lot of players have visibility issues and they need filters in order to be able to see, and a lot of those players are casual and on console. Also, I wouldn't be opposed to a crosshair. A lot of games that give motion sickness allow players to put a dot in the middle of the screen, and this is something that you can do with any modern monitor. Just add an option, since it's something that is very basic and would help a lot. And for those saying that it once again will give a competitive advantage, you still have to aim as Huntress. This feature would be very helpful for console players who might play on a TV without crosshairs. Finally, and I fully agree that this feature is complicated to introduce, but a phobia feature would be incredible. Something like making the clown a single color texture for people with colorophobia, or muting the sounds of the plague for people with emetophobia. These are just some of the features I think would be great in DbD, but I am sure other players have more suggestions to make. I can respect the mentality of the developers in wanting to make this game as immersive as possible, and that's why the visual heartbeat indicator was something they were okay with, but not anything else. However, I as a player think that player satisfaction should come first over game vision, especially when these features are very basic for other modern games. Only then will I vote for labor of love, when it's clear that players are the first priority for developers and not the revenue and pumping out the next licensed chapter. And as a final petition for this year, I really want behavior to polish the game up by a lot. This year, the game has had many problems with its performance, as well as networking issues, which just make me not want to play the game. A lot of very crazy bugs have happened, and I fully understand that with a live service game which constantly gets updates, some things do end up breaking. But when you bring killers like Vecna or Dracula, which are so complex, and then you try to sell us a character like Houndmaster, which was so broken on release, it just once again makes me angry with the game. I am fully okay with some things going under the radar, because DbD is indeed a complicated game to playtest, as there are a lot of variables happening, so it would be basically impossible to test every single thing. But Barmar's cosmetic sweater was something that any player would have noticed in a single match, and it is something that was released as paid content. And the same with flashbangs, as they are still broken and silent for the majority of times, or that one time when generators completely broke, or that one time where they tried to give us a twins rework which was completely busted. All of those things are clear in a single match. In other words, please just fix the bugs with the Knight and the Spirit. There are just so many bugs that have been in the game for ages. Instead of adding new content to DbD, rework content that is already in the game. Completely rework luck so it does something. Completely rework the blood whip, since so many items and offerings there are completely useless and it feels like a drag having to spend blood points on the characters. Do something about offerings, as there is currently no reason to not bring a blood points one or a map one in every single match. I also understand that there are bills to be paid, employees that need their salary, but I am getting really tired of licensed content. In the past, each license felt like an insane hit for everyone, but all the licenses this year felt very meh, and they were amazing. Alan Wake, Lara Croft, Dungeons and Dragons, Castlevania, none of them had the same hype as past licenses like Saw, Resident Evil or Silent Hill had, and I am not saying this because the licenses themselves are bigger. It might also be fully because of the marketing behind these licenses being so weak, as we know when each chapter will release, and we know months and even years in advance when each chapter will be licensed, whereas in the past it was all a mystery. I think that's why chapters like All Things Wicked did so well. It feels like instead of licensed content being something we enjoy for months, it's more like what's next. And at this point, getting licenses like Terrifier, Outlast, Jurassic Park, Dead Space, Predator and even Friday the 13th would not hype me as much as how the Silent Hill chapter did back in the days. With so much content and so many survivors, it truly feels like they are all pointless. Each survivor released just makes it harder for past survivors to get more cosmetics unless they are Michaela, and honestly at this point I am saturated, and I would rather focus on characters we have or make survivors individually more unique so there is a reason to play someone specific, but that's a topic for another day. Anyways, let me know in the comments what are your most wished things for 2025 and what you think behavior will do this year. As always, thank you for watching and have a nice day.